Welcome to The Invisible. This is the fifth event presented by Art in Flux in partnership with National Gallery X. And what is National Gallery X? We're a partnership between King's College London and the National Gallery here in London in the United Kingdom. And our goal is to explore the future of art with some of the world's most cutting edge artists whom we take as residents. This installment of Art in Flux peers into the invisible world of data. We're all surrounded by data now, and we're going to let some media artists guide us through the beauties and the dangers of that world that we're already immersed in. So I won't keep you much longer, but let me just give you a couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. These are if you're new to Zoom, we found that actually selecting the active speakers mode icon is the most comfortable viewing experience. That means you'll only see one speaker at a time, and I think the slide shows you how to do that. Tonight's program is going to run from 6:30 p.m. to 7:45, and there'll be presentations until 7, and then there'll be a Q&A. We hope you all get to participate in that at the end. If you want to ask the speaker a question, please write it in the Q&A box below. I'll try to fit it in. So keep an eye on the chat. We're going to be putting relevant links in the chat. I'm now going to hand over the event to Olive Gingrich, who is the curator at Art in Flux and who has gladly curated this evening for us. Welcome, Olive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adi, and thank you to the National Gallery X for having us. A good evening to everybody and a very warm welcome to you all. My name is Olive Gingrich, and I'm a co-founder of Art in Flux. I'm a media artist and a researcher focusing on mixed reality, visual sound, and neuro art in my artistic practice. Together with the art collective Analema Group, we're examining the relationship between sound and vision. And as a researcher, I'm investigating participatory art practices at the National Center for Computer Animation. Tonight, I have two hats on, as an artist with the Analema Group and as one of the directors of Art in Flux and curator of tonight's event, The Invisible. For those of you who don't know us, Art in Flux was founded in 2016 by the artist Maria Almena, Afra Shemza, and myself. We're an artist-led community interest company for artists working on the intersection between art and technology. We founded Art in Flux as an organization by artists for artists and have grown from a loose forum of 30 practitioners into a group of over 2,000 plus practicing artists, all working within art and technology. With Art in Flux, we created a platform for media artists to collaborate with institutions. And so far, we have worked with the V&A Museum, Ars Electronica, and National Gallery X, among others, and many universities, such as Goldsmith, the Royal College of Art, University of Greenwich, or Bournemouth University. And I will now hand over to my colleague, Maria Almena, who will tell you about our activities with Art in Flux.
Thanks, Olive. Good evening, everyone. I'm really delighted to be part of this event. I'm really looking forward to hear from our speakers. I'm Maria Almena. I'm director and artist at Kimatica Studio, as well as director and curator at Art in Flux. My art practice combines live performance, interactive technology, and the human body in order to create experimental transformative experiences that inspire reconnection with deep human emotions. I believe that contemporary art has a responsibility to contribute to societal change, as well as it can be a powerful tool as to create new ways of experiential therapy for audiences. Now, I'd like to briefly share some of the events that Flux runs over the course of the year. I'd like to start with our socials, which provide an intimate and supportive environment for our media art community. They are focused on peer-to-peer approach and are hosted to encourage networks and collaborations between our artists. We also have larger curated talks events that allow us to bring key themes from the media arts community to the general public. For previous events, we have collaborated with organizations such as Royal College of Art, Laser London, and Central St. Martin University. Last year, we were honored to confirm National Gallery X as our partner for our larger talks. In 2020, we curated 3 events: Gender Tag, curated by Olive Gingrich, focused on gender and media arts; Levitations, curated by myself, presented media art practice in the context of health and well-being; and Shifting Ground, curated by Afra Shemsa, explored media arts and cultural heritage. Recordings of these events are available online on the Art in Flux and the National Gallery website, so have a look if you are interested in these things. Now I would love to hand it over to my colleague Afra Shemsa.
Hi everyone, it's such a pleasure to be here tonight, and I'm really looking forward to the fantastic programme that Oliver's lined up this evening. I just can't wait. To introduce myself, I'm Afra Shemsa. I'm an artist and curator at Art in Flux. I'm a multimedia artist who works predominantly with light, abstraction and interactivity. My keen interest in modernism, my Islamic cultural heritage, creating art for all, and advocating for a more sustainable practice are all central themes within my work. With Art in Flux, we responded to the need for more virtual live events last year, and we created a new forum for live performances called Fluxlive. We have 2 new events coming up later this year, and recordings of our past Flux Lives can be seen by subscribing to our YouTube channel. Our workshop programme makes our artistic practices accessible to the wider public, and we're excited to have developed new online workshops this year and last, which have been featured at Space and Northern Farm Arts Centre, to name but a few. To profile pioneering media artists, Art in Flux regularly curates exhibitions. Our first exhibition in 2018 was at Ugly Duck, and it turned into a small festival of art, talks and performances. In 2019, we were invited to co-curate the Event 2 exhibition, which celebrated 50 years of the Computer Art Society. Last year, our annual exhibition was part of Ars Electronica Festival and the Digital Weekender at Waterman's. And last month, we held our latest virtual exhibition, Art in Flux Reclaimed, which was a space to showcase underrepresented groups within the media arts. And this launched at our last event with the National Gallery X. I'll now hand over to my colleague Olive, who will introduce the theme for this evening's event. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Afra, and a very warm welcome to Art in Flux, the Invisible. The amount of data accessible to us has increased multifold and rapidly over the last decades. Already in 2007, we had more bits of data at our disposal than there are estimated stars in the universe. Every year, the amount of data available to us doubles. The accessibility of these vast amounts of data accounts for a source of inspiration, creative material for artists to result in all new experiences of this data to the public. Working with this data changes our understanding of it, allows us to grapple with its complexity, and makes explicit inherent relationships through visual or sonic representations. Before we dive into contemporary media arts practices through the presentations of our speakers, I just want to provide a quick overview of historical approaches to data visualization. The Babylonians used clay to create maps, visually representing geographic correlations, thereby providing a legacy of orientation for future generations. This Egyptian map on papyrus uses color to indicate geological information on mining that would not be visible to the human eye. And the third map is a European medieval map showing trajectories of planets, the stars, and the moon. Since ancient times, artists and scientists have worked with data to understand the world around us better, to reduce complexity visually so as to render the analysis more understandable. Visual representation not only serves preservation, but helps to reveal hidden properties that might not be obvious to the human eye or the human mind. These diagrams by the Spanish philosopher Ramon Llull reveal that schematics can contribute to new insights. This disc illustrates different cofactors of truth, and turning the disc leads to a new reading of its underlying concepts. These maps on the right by Edmund Halley from the 18th century were early illustrations of atmospheric shifts and weather conditions, schematic techniques of spatial attributions that are now widely in use in weather forecasts and that allow for a deeper understanding of atmospheric currents. The 18th and 19th century are widely regarded as the origins of data visualization. So these are examples of illustrations of demographic comparisons. Here on the left, you can see illustrations by Charles de Fourcroy, who used spatial separation to illustrate demographic volumes across Europe. Here in the middle, you can see one of the now famous graphs by William Playfair, who is also known as the father of data visualization and the inventor of the pie chart. These charts rely on two factors: spatial components and the principle of reduction of complex data sets. Two principles that the media artist Lev Manovich identified as key characteristics of data visualization. This map on the right by Dr. John Snow shows how new insights gained through data visualization can help to have real societal repercussions. Dr. John Snow was convinced that cholera was not transmitted through the air, but through water. And to prove his suspicions were correct, he mapped local cholera outbreaks and water pipes onto this map, and with this, confirmed his suspicions. This in turn led to the closure of contaminated water pumps in the area, and his insights are now regarded as a major breakthrough in public health and data visualization alike. The Italian statistician Luigi Perrozzo is credited with creating one of the very first 3D representations of data. And here you can see some of the data visualization of Swedish population data based on their census. And with the advent of the computer, all new forms of data manipulation, analysis, and representation became possible. Here you can see very fast data plots that were created at Harvard through computer use, and we're all familiar with the visual complexity that you can now achieve through 3D graphs, such as seen on the website Information is Beautiful. And while according to Lev Manovich, the key principles of data visualizations haven't really changed substantially in the 300 plus years since the first heyday, I would argue that new media changes our understanding of data fundamentally by introducing all new variables. Multisensory representation of data has now become an art genre in its own right, although not all of tonight's speakers might identify with this term. Aaron Koblin's now famous representation of US flight patterns was exhibited at the V&A Museum and is a modern-day classic of data art. The artist's Boredom Research frequently work with audiovisual representations of complex scientific phenomena. In their artwork Afterglow, Boredom Research use epidemiological data on mosquito flight paths, thereby illustrating how diseases spread. This artwork is very topical today and won Boredom Research the Lumen Award in 2016. So not only are we able to process data faster than ever, allowing for real-time visualization of data sets, but new media also allows us to experience data as multidimensional, heterogeneous phenomena. Media art offers new vehicles for multisensory representation and the ability to immerse audiences within audiovisual or sometimes even tactile representations, placing the human being at the center of this experience. And in my own artistic practice, I work quite a lot with big data. For instance, this air pollution data set by King's College, which shows pollution levels in North Kensington. This data is presented as a site-specific light installation, and it shows air pollution literally where it happens as a projection, light projection that seeps through the windows. Thirdly, media art enables new experiences of data through new forms of interaction, be it through projection of light, like with this piece Air, or through immersive real-time sound representation, like in this piece on the right, Kima Wheel, we created with the Analema Group, which we will discuss later today, but also through immersive interfaces such as VR and mixed reality. My art piece Aura used a holographic display as an interface for brainwave visualization. Aura provides real-time readings of the audience's focus and attention, and the artwork becomes a window to the mind of the audience. Aura was shown at the V&A and the British Science Festival. New media art can also make use of new data analysis techniques. My new artwork, Zeitgeist, developed with the artist and researcher Dr. Sharma Rahman and her company Neurocrate, works with AI-based classification of flow mental states. With Zeitgeist, two people experience their flow state visually, turning the artwork into an interface for creative collaboration. Zeitgeist is currently on display at Poe Museum in Dorset and will also be shown at the HBI Institute in Potsdam later this year. The National Gallery houses one of the greatest collections of paintings in the world and has more than 6 million visitors a year. And this is an absolute treasure of data sets that reveals a lot about the visitors' experiences to the National Gallery. At the same time, the National Gallery makes entirely new experiences of data possible by commissioning new art and artistic experiences. For instance, in its recent VR experience of Leonardo da Vinci's Virgin of the Rocks, where audiences gained a deeper understanding of the painting by revealing underlying techniques and historic contexts, using VR to make hidden properties of this masterpiece visible. And with the National Gallery X, the National Gallery created a new forum for artistic engagement with the National Gallery's collection. The Analema Group's Schema Color revisited some of the great artworks of the National Gallery's collection and worked with 360 sound and vision to make this data accessible. And tonight we will hear more about this project. The title of the event, The Invisible, draws on the ability of media art to make invisible connections tangible, whether this is the relationship between sound, matter, and the visual, as is the case with the Analema Group, the relationship between humans and nature, as exemplified by Marshmallow Laser Feast, or hidden processes of the human mind, as in Refik Anadol's work. And with this, I will now hand over to tonight's host, Dr. Ali Hossaini, the co-director of National Gallery X, to introduce the speakers.
Thanks very much for that really great presentation, Olive. I especially enjoyed the historical context you gave to data. We make it sound like everything's so new, but it's really not. These are centuries-old processes. Appreciated that really good introduction. First, I'd like to start by introducing, though, Evgenia, Emmetts, and Alain Renaud, who are two of the principals of Analema Group, which also includes David Negreo and Olive Gingrich, whom you've just seen. Evgenia focuses on images, language, and performance within the collective, and these draw on her training in photography. So everything she does is very visually based. Alain, on the other hand, works with music, sound, and 3D audio. He's also enabled dozens of network performances over the years, including some of my own. So he works in both drama and music. Analema was founded in 2010, and since then it's been created immersive installations that question the boundaries of sound, image, and spatial awareness. In 2020, they became the first residents of National Gallery X with their piece Schema Color. And now they're going to start talking, but we're going to go straight into video. So you'll see some of their work, and then you'll see their faces. Over to you.
Hello, everybody. So while we are setting up presentation, I'll just say a couple of words at the beginning. So hopefully you got some inspiration and atmosphere of what we are up to and what we're doing. So my name is Evgenia, and I'm a founder and artistic director of Analema Group. And we're going to share with you some of the artworks that we created over more than 10 years now, working together. So we can go to the next slide, I think. Thank you, Alain. So this is us. This is the team, Oliver, Alain, David, and myself, Evgenia. And this is the picture taken at the Tate Exchange during our project of Kima Noise that you've seen some snippets on the video. So we've been really set up as an organization, as a collaborative collective, working completely together and sharing the kind of both the creative work and what we call the business of working as artists. And we've been now running for more than 10 years. We've been founded in London, but we've worked also as a completely distributed team since we're now based all in different locations. And Alain, you can go to the next slide. And we've been basically looking at the relationship between sound and vision in its various expressions, its various forms. We've been looking at the physics, at mathematics of sound, and pretty much working in the electronic realm of what we call possible simulations of these relationships between sound and vision, and looking for ways of expressing it in real interactive time, together with audiences. We always bring audience in the midst of our experiences. Next slide, please. So here you see our very first project, Kima, in 2013. We started our development earlier, but that was one of the first public shows. And what we did is we had Satoko Fukuda playing violin, one single music instrument, and she's been basically hooked up to the system where the sounds would be analyzed in real time, and depending on the pitch and the amplitude, it would create cymatic patterns. So here you see some visual examples. You can go to our website and see the full video. Next slide, please. Here is example of our project where we went much more spatial. So we did projection mapping on really beautiful ornate wooden ceiling of the Union Chapel. And we did real-time interactive sonic experiences and dance experiences whereby the instruments like the organ of the Union Chapel, violin, drums, and human voice were directly in an improvised way transformed into visual Chladni plates, into cymatic patterns. So we worked a lot in the realm of cymatics. Next slide, please. This is our project called The Wheel. It was done in 2016 in the Roundhouse. That was a fully participative journey done for performers, but also for the audience. And what we did is we made immersive projection onto 360-degree screen created by Ron Arrett for the special celebration of 50th year anniversary of the Roundhouse. And we created a completely moving piece, which was based on visualizing vocal signatures. So we really worked here a lot with human voice. And it was written as a piece for the participants, for the audience, but also for the performers. And we kind of tried to explore this space between who is the performer and who is the participant, and how we can co-create the composition together. So here we worked a lot with machine learning. We used a machine learning mechanism which allowed us in real time to capture voices and to actually process them and to look at different parameters within human voice and how they can be interpreted. Next slide, please. So this is just one of the images of actually me performing in this case. And next slide. So we continued working a lot with human voice, but also in between, we also try to work with different kind of tools and instruments, because each instrument, each sonic or musical instrument offers a kind of variety of richness of harmonics. In this case, we used singing bowls. It was quite a large project between 3 spaces at a space called L'Abri in Geneva. It's a foundation for young arts. And there we were working with the 3 singing bowls, interpreting the sounds into interference pattern, which is simulation of interference pattern based on liquids in this case. But there was also like an immersive experience walking through the whole space. And we created these beautiful standing waves that you could experience quite viscerally, but also vocal performance to which audience could connect and kind of co-create it together. And next slide, please. And our exploration of human voice and how it can be transformed, interpreted in the space between several people led us to create Kima Voice in 2019, and we keep developing this project. This was shown at Kinetica, and it is created for 2 voices based on harmonics, so based on resonance and harmonies between the 2 voices. So if 2 people are finding resonance between themselves and are hitting a specific harmony, then the pattern would show in a specific way. And our idea is that with this kind of participatory work, anybody who is not a professional singer can really step in and explore this further. And I will pass on to Oliver now to let him explain how we also hook it into scientific research and more data. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Evgenia. Yeah, so Kima Voice was also a collaboration with the Center for Performance Science, which is a research institute based between Imperial College of London and the Royal College of Music. And it was part of their heart study that looks at the impact of art and culture on health and well-being. And specifically, we were looking at the connection between our kind of participatory arts practice and social connectedness. And interestingly, so as Evgenia explained, we were measuring attack frequency and amplitude and visualizing this in real time, but we're also visually represented these harmonies between different participants. And these were very often complete strangers, so people who didn't know each other at all. And if we could go to the next slide, please. And here you can see the audience at the Great Exhibition Road Festival, which is one of the largest arts and science festivals in the UK. And so it was quite a large amount of people that just came through the doors and created music with one another. And what we wanted to establish is whether through this process of shared music making, they actually feel closer to each other, they feel more socially connected, and whether there is an impact on mental well-being that comes out of this engagement with participatory art. And if we can go to the next slide. So interestingly, we measured at the source, so we're able to capture how often people were harmonizing with one another, and also the duration of the harmonization, so how often and how long they were in tune with one another. And then we related this to survey data that we captured before and after the engagement. And we were able to show with Hearts and the Heart Study and the team at the Center for Performance Science that there is indeed a connection between participatory engagement and how connected you feel with one another, how in tune you feel with one another, and also how happy you are. Yeah, so this is part of the wider research that we're doing as Analema Group into the effect of participatory arts practices on health and well-being. Another project that looks into this effect of health and well-being, of sound on health and well-being, is Kima Noise, which we produced at the Tate Exchange at Tate Modern in London. And Kima Noise specifically examines how urban noise affects us physically, mentally, cognitively. And what we wanted to do with this art and research project is we wanted to provide new forms of engagement with local communities. So around the Tate, the daytime noise levels are particularly high. And we thought we were going to invite the local communities, so through local community organizations, into the space at the Tate Modern to discuss and discover new forms of dealing with these noise levels. And if we can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so we did this through workshops and artist talks and an artistic installation. that was based on real-time captures of urban noise from within the vicinity of the Tate, and that was distributing these streams in real time into the space. And so it was really a combination of building on existing research. We were collaborating with Professor Stephen Stansfield, a scientist at Queen Mary University of London, to make this research accessible to the public. And if we can go to the next slide. Yeah, and here you can see one of the artistic components. I'm going to hand over to Alain to talk more about the art installation at Tate Modern.
So first of all, hello. If you hear thunderstorms, it's normal. There is a massive thunderstorm. It's not a hovering over Switzerland right now, so it's not a sound design effect that is wanted. So yes, this Kima noise experience was really a fully immersive sound experience, and it was meant to make the audience aware of the sounds surrounding them in a big city like London and the effect on their health. And the idea was to actually bring the sounds that were in the outside into the inside and allow the participants to make their own mix down of those sound sources and have them be aware of basically the sounds that were surrounding them. It's really the idea is really to allow the audience to learn about the history of noise, their effect on their physical body and their mental states. So the audience is really invited to envision creative ways in dealing with noise in their own life through active listening and participation. So we actually designed this visual expression of sound and actually allowed people to kind of feel the thresholds of noise and how it was affecting them and all that stuff. That was what was happening in the first zone of the this Tate exhibition. And then what happened is that we actually for this designed custom-made streamers that were broadcasting sound taken in real time from various areas around the Tate Modern. The sound was of broadcast quality, which was really good in the sense that we were able to actually get a very granular kind of sound types and being able to really listen to it and immerse ourselves into that. That was really for, as I said, the awareness phase, making you aware of that. And then the audience would actually move to the other part of the exhibition, which was a sort of meditative stage, which was allowing them to really kind of see and hear the different shapes that were around the Tate. So for example, what you can see here is a visual representation of the shard being modulated by those sounds that are affecting, those sound waves that are affecting the buildings and the structure and the surroundings that are going around there. So we also have a video actually of this whole experience that you can actually find through our website. I'll now very briefly switch to the next project, but I will let Ash play a short video as an introduction, and then I'll talk for a few more minutes before handing on to the next person. Thank you.
So many ways, but it's also something that perhaps you go away with thinking afterwards, well, what an amazing array of colors that painting has brought to me and my imagination.
The idea is for the audience to explore these different palettes as a VR and as a 360 experience at home, and to be able to navigate through these paintings and to perceive these color selections in an all new way.
Analema Group is an artistic collective. It's a collaborative collective which was founded in 2010. And what we do is we create immersive participatory experiences for our audiences based around exploration of relationship between sound and vision.
We worked very closely with the team at the National Gallery X. They invited us to explore different paintings, to explore the collection. but also to understand the ideas of pigmentation better.
So what we try to explore in the scientific department is to say that there's a history, a physical history behind a painting. So where the materials came from, how the materials have degraded, how the colors have changed. And to try and allow people to see beyond this is an old historic object, but there's actually a story, there's a response to it.
The challenge for the residents at National Gallery X is to come in with digital tools and fresh eyes and to talk about something that no one's talked about before.
Working with digital technology, we gain a much deeper understanding of existing art practices. In the case of the Ruffini portrait, for instance, we learned that the couple that is famously holding hands inside the painting is not actually holding hands in the reflection seen in the mirror of that painting. But more importantly, we gain a much deeper understanding of color and color palettes.
We are looking at the color palettes and the colors that the particular painters were using, and we are allowing audience to step into the space full of light and sound to learn, understand more, become more aware about specific color palettes.
One of the things that's really interesting to me in the work that Analema have done is taking some of the themes in current technology practice, particularly thinking about the role of data, and applying them to paintings. By taking paintings and not just considering them as material and cultural artworks, but thinking about them as being data somehow underneath, we can translate and create new ways of thinking about what those artworks mean.
On this Color 360 projects, the audience will be able to experience the painting through lights and color. Will be experienced immersive inside like a dome of light, and we can interact with your phone, just turning around and see different points of interest. So every time you experience the piece.
So yes, this project was really a fantastic in the sense that we had a chance to work closely with the scientific staff of the National Gallery and ourselves and see how everything could be interrelated. And we actually took, as it explained in the video, a couple of really famous paintings from the National Gallery and turned them into these immersive installations, allowing really the public to feel and kind of relate to certain things around the paintings. What was really important was to actually work on the science of it by kind of looking at the basic pigments of all those paintings, the basic colors, and how we could translate that into sounds and visuals. Again, there are videos that are actually available as 360 videos because we had to actually turn the installation into a virtual installation because of COVID. That is available through the National Gallery NGX, to the NGX website that you can actually look and experiment at your leisure as 360 videos. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll pass on to the next person. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Alain. And is everybody done with Analema now? Shall we move on? Yes, thanks very much, Alain and Analema. I do hope everybody will take a look at Color on our website. But now I'd like to talk about our next speaker, Refik Anadol. Refik Anadol's work offers us a precocious look into the future. He does building-sized installations that dissolve architecture into phantasmagorias, that weave digital technologies into the fabric of the city. And he's really earned the privilege of working at scale. His work has been commissioned at major sites in cities around the world. And aside from a very powerful visceral experience that someone gets from seeing something that's large and beautiful at scale, and they are beautiful, they're also challenging. And I'd say Anadol's work and installations challenge viewers to consider the effects of some of these mega trends that are really impacting our lives, such as ubiquitous computing, media everywhere, and finally, the colonization of everyday life, even your eyeballs, by digital media. So let me introduce Refik Anadol. Thanks very much.
Ali, thank you very much. So great to be here with you all together with the wonderful minds and souls. Hello, everyone. I would like to share my screen quickly for like a 10-15 minutes quick keynote to share the journey as quick as possible. Hope you can see the screen. Okay, so I'm Rafiq Anadol, and great to be here with you all as a media artist practicing as a studio last 7 years, and also teaching at University of California, Los Angeles, where I got my second Master of Fine Arts degree at Design Media Arts. I started my journey as a truly avid believer in science fiction, watched this movie Blade Runner when I was 8 years old, and the same year got my first computer. And I think the early imagination and try to understand what art means is, or creativity means, and the feeling of creativity, I think, rise in there. Over the past, I think, several years, especially, I must try to like deeply understand not only just techno-fetish context of like technology, but also how it's transforming who we are, our materials in life, culture, DNA, and flesh, and anything that is actually machines and systems are surrounding us. And especially in the work that I'm specifically trying to understand is, while we are becoming these new entities that are truly becoming like a new control machines, how as human beings we are controlling what it is and what controls us. And at the meantime, we are pretty much understanding that we are in this new realm of like reality where the physical and virtual compile together, and then we are in this sense of displacement. And truly this question always like comes to my mind from one of my hero, John Maeda. He says design is a solution to a problem, art is a question to a problem. And what I found is, what does it really mean to be a human in 21st century is one of the most actually fundamental question that I'm trying to tackle with my team here in Los Angeles. As a practice, I'm doing my very best to practice as like a horizontal studio. We are now 14 people, can speak 14 languages, and represents 10 countries. One of the reasons of this diversity and multicultural input is try to make art for anyone, any age, and any background. And to make this happen, this may be a cliche startup page, but it is not. Honestly, last maybe 7 years as a studio, we have been practicing on the edge of technology, thanks to many supporters and in the field that is maybe not directly in the arts, but they are really looking for artistic questions and merit in the journey. So far, one of the challenges as a studio is how to narrate a new kind of a visual vision, or find a language like a mathematical language that can be for anyone and any age and any background. So over the last 7 years, we were fortunate to generate experiences all over the world, most likely everywhere except Antarctica. And recently, one of the most inspiring research that we have been doing is 2015 and 16. I was one of the first early generation artists in residence at Google AMI, which allowed me and my team to deep dive into the context of machine intelligence. I think for me, data is not just a bunch of numbers. Data is a form of memory. And this memory can be visualized in many forms. And memory doesn't, or this data visualization in this context is not about the recoverability or making another data visualization that has a mathematical context, but it's more about cultural context, finding poetry, sublime, and many other invisible patterns in the invisible world of data. And for this, my practice started to focus on collective memories, such as like architectural heroes from archaeological research, time, space, nature, and in many scale, as a practice in the studio, we try to analyze this collective memory of major image archives and try to find new ways of connecting them. And this can be an institution, this can be just a library in a public space, and many different forms. And this can be a human memory recordings like EEG data, this can be fMRI data, this can be Wi-Fi, LTE, Bluetooth, and in different scales. And it's just trying to narrate this invisible world around us. And I also found that architecture is one of the most fantastic way of transforming this information. And I think, yes, architecture culturally recognized as a shelter for humanity, as a function for culture and many others. But also I believe that every single surface, every single architectural space in the world can become a canvas for artists and creators. So, and I also found that maybe once machine intelligence, specifically AI, have been purposefully and impactfully used, it can also create new ways of narration in the built environments. For example, it's another big question to ask, can a building remember, can it learn, or can it dream? And of course, this question is now much more meaningful, especially after the IoT world, and especially the idea of embedding media arts into architecture. This is not anymore just utopic imagination at all. In my practice as a studio, we are trying to find these new ways of narrating AI, neuroscience, and architecture, and try to give meaningful experiences in public environments, in private environments, in immersive environments, and so on. As a media artist, I started my journey in custom software development and specifically heavily focused on computer graphics last maybe 11 years. But especially as a studio practice, the more we got diluted into like different level of information, we were able to bring depth to surface. And over the years, what I also learned that our audience became much more larger and much more diverse. And eventually we found out that sometimes people want to explore the surface, sometimes want to go deeper. And over the also years, specifically machine hallucinations, which is like an AI research that we have been thoroughly understanding generative adversarial networks and many other generative algorithms, which are allowing us to look at big data and regenerate some memories in the form of hallucinations. It also allows us to go a little bit beyond just how can we narrate the latent space, a space in the mind of a machine. What was really fascinating for me is when a machine learns, we simply do not truly understand what it may learn from. But what was really inspiring is generate another software, another algorithm will technically allow us to put a camera in the mind of a machine. So simply what you are seeing here is not random pilots. They are specifically artistically curated latent spacewalks, and each of them have a meaning between each other and a true machine collaboration, or a machine as a tool, as a creative tool, which is specifically speculated in this machine hallucination series. And over the years, I also learned that maybe it was just a shocking experience. While I was like talking with one of the most inspiring, scientists and researchers and top-notch people who are dreaming about the near future, I also found that one of the most fundamental problems of humanity, which is a disease called Alzheimer's or dementia, was still a problem. In almost 2017, unfortunately, this project called Melting Memories arise. So unfortunately, I learned that my uncle was diagnosed by Alzheimer, and he was losing his collective memories and personal memories. And as a family, we have been very much hit, but as a person who had been very close to technology and scientific endeavors, I also felt interestingly more responsible for the problem. And that was the day that I was asking the question, like, can we touch our memories? Can we remember in a way that's different than how we do in every day? And thanks to the wonderful person from University of California, San Francisco, Professor Adam Gazzaley, and his lab, NeuroEscape, allowed me and my team to record a significant amount of EEG data and analyze the data by an algorithm called EEG Learn. And we were able to classify the moment of remembering. Even though what we see is an kind of a noise algorithm that is driven by these patterns of EEG data, but the concept is, the contextualizing of memory in the form of a 3D space, or being able to like narrate our inner world, or probably our most precious data that makes meaning of life and reality, was the fundamental concept. And that's one of the exciting moments that when art, science, and technology collides, there is this serendipity around that context. And that's what we are trying to give a discourse and context as a studio, and collaborating, and also recently generate a piece for Venice Biennale architecture, which is called Sense of Space, exploring the connectome architecture and molecular architecture, and trying to find what does it really mean to live in our best day of our life, the worst of their lives. Can our feelings, can our emotions become a space? Can we really see beyond what is just concrete, glass, and steel? I do believe that architecture also allowing us I do also believe that architecture has a much more deeper meaning once we have these augmentations. Last almost 10 years, I'm doing my very best to analyze built environments and how can we translate the moment of immersion. I do believe that even though VR, AR, and XR is an incredible tool of imagination, I also found out that without wearing any kind of equipment, our own peripheral vision, retina experience is still very inspiring. And last year, we were able to create a piece called Machine Hallucination in New York. And then this project also allowed us as a studio to narrate 113 million images of New York and let the people be surrounded by a narrative defined by AI, and machine intelligence aesthetics have been surrounding the people, and they create a kind of a half an hour AI cinema. So it's a new field of imagination we have been practicing last almost 4 years. And we have been generating several versions of immersive storytelling, and specifically calling it synesthetic architecture. A space maybe one day will remember, will have an association with the audience beyond just sensorial input, but something have a symbiotic relationship in a kind of a neural network level. And lastly, we have been very fortunate and invited by the National Gallery of Victoria to generate a piece for the Triennale, NGV Triennale, which was just closed a couple of weeks ago, called Quantum Memories. It was a very unique collaboration Google AI quantum team, who have been behind the quantum advantage research that they just finished with a 52 qubit of quantum computation were allowed to be shared publicly. And this data is one of the most inspiring 9 gigabyte raw probability of reality. And inspired from the Alex Greenland's devs and also inspired from the Hugh Everett's mini worlds interpretation, we were able to generate a machine that can look at the patterns of probability in the mind of quantum computation and train an AI model by using 200 million nature photos and let the AI to analyze probability of quantum computation and generate its own latent walk. So simply, maybe we will eventually need another machine to see subatomic worlds. As we all know, without machines, we cannot see macro space, we cannot see the space, we cannot understand our body, we cannot communicate with each other anymore. I think humanity will always need machines to most likely survive. And lastly, maybe one of the most inspiring speculation for our studio, can a building remember, can it learn, can it dream? 2 years ago, one of my heroes, Frank Gehry, and LA Philharmonic invited to collaborate with the fantastic Philharmonic's 100-year celebration. And for this, we were able to challenge the Philharmonic archives and reach 100 years of every single data that they ever recorded and collected. And for this, we were able to generate custom neural networks and collaborate with Google Arts and Culture and Parag Mital and many others. And we were able to classify the entire 100 years of archives of LA Philharmonic and then transform them into machine learned kind of a architectural speculation. To make this happen, we use 42-channel projection and cover entire Frank Gehry's Disney Hall, and then specifically use his original archival model and deconstruct the model into pieces to generate a kind of a new canvas, which later then become a living skin as Frank Gehry described. This project is really meaningful because it was almost 2012 and 14 when I was imagining this context, and it took really long time to come to a context and discourse that maybe in near future architecture can become these new ways of portal to its own consciousness. And to really make this happen, it was just beyond using simple neural networks. We really touch every single decision of the institution. And over the years, we also learned that actually neural networks are becoming more and more critical for humanity. Our privacy, our free will, and everything is becoming on the hands of machines. We also classify the entire archive of Philharmonic and look at this data from neural networks and generate three-dimensional data sculptures. We also analyze the entire sound archives and classify the 70 years of 70 terabytes of raw data, every single sound archive. And then finally, if a building one day become consciousness, perhaps it may ask, do I need to look like this? And then we speculate the entire, probably much anything we could find from social media and photographic archives of Disney Hall and train a neural network and let the building dream its own entity or it's kind of its own consciousness on top of its own. And then we project this data back to the building, and it was turned into a public art that was for anyone, any age and any background in Los Angeles. We got around 100,000 people, which was a truly public art experience. Friends, families, dogs and animals, and pretty much anyone inhabits in the Los Angeles heard about the project, and we had a major positive reaction. But what was really inspiring to me was, instead of like creating this sci-fi narrative that is pretty much hard to imagine, it was more like a near future where a public can come together and touch a moment of science fiction, which was a sentence clearly described by Alejandro Inarritu, which one of my hero. And I think I want to finish one of the quote that I heard recently, which was William Gibson. He was in Mission Hallucination. He was saying it was kind of the feeling of being in one of his narratives. It was a cyberpunk as fuck. So I think, sorry my language, but it's his language in Twitter, but I hope it was it was this kind of like a feeling of being in remembering the future moment. Thank you very much for listening, and happy to get your questions and share with all the people in here today. Thank you.
Airson, Rafiq, thank you very, very much for that. That was mind-boggling, and also I'd say, the future is here Alrighty, so we're going to move now to the third presentation, which is, let me introduce Airson Hunterson, who works with Barney Steele and Robin McNicholas in a dynamic body of collaborators that make Marshmallow Laser Feast one of the UK's most accomplished and well-known, as well as forward-looking arts collectives. Marshmallow Laser Feast integrates sculpture, media, performance, and VR. But I'd say one thing that distinguishes them is Laser Feast is about ecological as well as virtual environments. So Airson and his colleagues use experiential design to counter alienation from the natural world. So by combining the two, Airson and his collaborators aim to reintegrate human experience and human perception with the hidden organic worlds that keep us alive. Airson, pleased to have you here with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the magnificent introduction. I couldn't put it any better in 15 minutes. So let me share my screen and then we can begin. Right. I hope you can all see my screen and hear the sound. Great. Well, thanks for everybody who are actually choosing to be indoors and watch those incredible presentations rather than being outside in the sun. I really appreciate it. I'm Airson Hunterson. I'm part of London-based experiential collective Marshmallow Laser Feast. It's quite a mouthful, and I hope you'll see what it means at the end. Without a specific meaning. So as an artist and a director, we work with a broad range of practices, from sculpture to kind of interactive works, video installations, to virtual reality and augmented reality. And one main theme that's been emerging in our practice for the last 6-7 years is somehow collaborating with scientific institutions or individuals and understanding that scientific knowledge and translating that into experiential pieces. So I'm going to show you a bit of a kind of a show reel that would give you a broad idea of what else we do. And then I'll be focusing on a few specific projects with the limited time we have today. But the interesting thing about the studio or the collective is obviously building a multidisciplinary team is extremely important. And we collaborate with creative coders, Lidar technicians, engineers, architects, composers, sound designers, scientists, tree surgeons, interaction designers, experience designers, data analysts, 3D modelers, wearable technologists, machine learning experts, robotic engineers. It's a long list, and it shifts and changes each time in a quite interesting way. I guess the collaboration is in the core of pretty much everything we do, and we celebrate that collaboration through our pieces. But since 2015, I guess, we start focusing on how we can collaborate with the more than human world, not just humans, but more than humans. And how can we understand their reality that is completely different than ours? How can we tap into a different world that is not available or immediately available to human perception? So that became our main focus for the last few years, and basically looking at the liminal space where the scientific knowledge and technology and art lies, and try to produce pieces that can actually evoke some of the sensory sparks towards concepts that we are quite familiar with in our day-to-day lives, but somehow became numb to those things. So I think one gift quite nicely describes it's basically trying to blend the boundaries between physical and digital, and using technology while blurring those boundaries is something we do a lot, and it's kind of our go-to tool, our go-to enabler to deal with. And it somehow enables us to see something that is in front of us in a different lens, with a different view. And speaking of seeing something with new pair of eyes, this is quite a good representation, which I use a lot. This is a painting from 1821 called Derby at Epsom, and Theodore Géricault painted those magnificently galloping horses. By this point, we've been painting horses for 42,000 years. If we, start from Lascaux and Chauvet, living with horses by, 5,500 years by this point, and yet we thought they were actually running like this until Muybridge came, invented photography, and shot a number of, a sequence of images while a horse is galloping, and realized that actually horses never, lift all their feet from the ground. So this was an interesting way. Obviously, we are talking about an artistic concept, and there's an exaggeration. But if we suspend that for a second, we realize an invention of a new technique or a technology allows us to look at something with a completely different pair of eyes, even if we see that thing for 50,000 years, or even if we live with them for 5,000 years. So every piece of new technology is an enabler, or a potential to be an enabler in this context. And this is how we approach it. And today I'll be talking about more of the kind of orchestrated sensory experiences. And our canvas has now become more than ever the perception, and exploring the world beyond the limits of our senses. Somehow in the center of this journey that we are embarking for the last years. And it's really interesting, because when we talk about reality or perception of reality, and somehow molding reality or someone's reality momentarily, or short time or long time, we're talking about somehow manipulating the conscious experience, and even questioning selfhood or authenticity or even realness. And with the emerging technologies such as virtual reality or augmented reality, those are the real questions that we should actually ask. It's not just another new piece of technology that will be on our shelves, or on our eyeballs, but it is also a kind of moving us to a cultural shift in the way how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive the world around us. And creating experiences or experiential scene is not something new. It's been very, very long time. Immersing audiences using technology can be tracked back to ancient Greek. They have used puppeteering to make actors look like gods on stage. So the idea of the whole new medium is actually not as new as we think it is. And some of those examples are interesting, because it's a good reminder for ourselves. Our human needs don't change much over the course of all those thousands of years, although the technologies that we tell those stories through change. So somehow, how can we use those technologies to tap into some of those emotions that hasn't been tapped before? And we're asking questions like, can we reconnect with nature through virtual reality? I know it sounds like an oxymoron, and I'm not techno-optimistic, delusional hippie, but one interesting thing, like the Muybridge's chronophotography example, the reputation of day-to-day sensory bombardment can make us numb to the world around us. And maybe augmented reality, virtual reality, or immersion in the form of art can work like an unblocker that shakes our snow globe. So while we were kind of engaging with this theme in 2015 through a new commission that was commissioned by the Abundant Normal Devices Festival, we stumbled upon this theme called Umwelt by Jacob von Uxküll. It means self-centered world, which we consider that the reality that we perceive day to day is the absolute truth. But when you shift your perception into a midget or a mosquito's or a bee's reality, the world completely transforms. Therefore, can we actually experience something other than ourselves to expand our sensory horizon in order to build better empathy towards the world that is more than human? So through that journey and exploring the sensory features of animals and translating them into experiences, we also stumble upon those magnificent creatures that's been standing gloriously for last 2,000 years, 3,000 years, being the largest single living cell organism ever existed. And how do they perceive time? Like, how do they live? How do they breathe? And for them, are we actually like tiny mosquitoes that are coming and going and exploring and disappearing? Even our civilizations that we, celebrate so much. When we think about it, this was standing there 2,000 years ago. Most of the history books that we have, all the detailed events, they all happened while this individual tree was growing there. So how can we suspend our disbelief for a moment and shift our perception into something that is so much more larger than ourselves, something that lives, that perceives that life, something so much slower than ourselves? So through that, we've started exploring this idea and how we can capture this world. There's a huge amount of data, obviously, coming from being able to go there and capture the volumetric information from those spaces in order to create those experiences. And one of the techniques that we use very often is called Lidar Scanning. It's a laser scanning that gives a very accurate 3D representation of the volumetric world. And you can take data and then convert into any medium that you choose. For us, it was a big challenge, obviously, trying to scan something this size, this scale, that took very, very long, many days to capture fully. And then being able to build a narrative that the individual becomes a floating consciousness and follows a single drop of water that is going into the kind of sucked by the roots of the sequoia tree and then pump up to the canopy, and then transpiration happens, which they go into the atmosphere with all the other subatomic molecules around. So I'm gonna show you a short clip of this world where we try to suspend that disbelief, and also how can we emphasize that we are not actually individuals, and no living thing is an individual. And if everything is living in a symbiosis, we should be able to somehow feel this. Although our social constructs built around us as individuals and potentially consumers, so breaking that for a moment is really important in order to kind of pass some of those messages that are very important for the future of this planet. The other part of the data capturing for these type of projects for us is often long conversations with scientists, and for tree hugger in particular, we work with the INM project, Salford University, Natural History Museum, who opened their labs, their fMRI scans, and gave us all the context how actually a single drop of water traveled all the way up to 100 meters, which is this incredible phenomena that there is not a single consensus on. We are yet to scientifically describe and explain what's actually going on. So this is our best guess based on our conversations and all the papers that we try to read and sum it up, which then turn into a virtual reality experience where you can don your headset and then embark on this journey, becoming and following a single drop of water from roots to the canopy. So I will continue with the other projects, but in between, I would like to invite you for a little pause with a breathing meditation. This is an excerpt from one of our latest projects called We Live in an Ocean of Air, which was launched in 2019 at Saatchi Gallery. And in the beginning, 12 people embark on a journey to see each other's breath and exchange a breath with a plant. So I'd like to invite you all for a 2 minutes breathing meditation. Please put your headphones on, close your eyes, and listen the voiceover.
Find a relaxed, comfortable position. Keep your back upright, not too tight. Hands resting comfortably by your side. Notice the shape of your body, its weight, the connection with the floor, with space. Relax any areas of tightness or tension. Bring your awareness to your breath. Inhale deeply through your nose. And exhale through your mouth. Inhale through your nose. And exhale through your mouth. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale. And exhale. Now raise your right hand. Look at it. See the oxygenated blood as it flows through your veins. Look around. See other explorers nearby. Be gentle with them. Step forward and follow your breath as it flows through the forest. Where do you end and the plants begin?
So 25 billion molecules are constantly darting faster than the speed of sound when you inhale a single breath. An average person breathes in equivalent to 13 pints of air in every minute, which is 17,000 breaths per day. If you consider that half of our breaths, or the oxygen coming from the trees, we are roughly engaging with another specimen 8,500 times a day in average. This could be the tree just outside, or it could be the tree in the Amazon, or it could be in California, in Sequoia National Forest. So actually we are far more connected to the world around us than we think we are. And it is important to pause for a second and think about that, and somehow bring that perception a little more to our daily habits. This is a very long quote. I think I'm going to skip it, but the core of it is the plants are not alive, so they don't exhibit the same animism that we consider as liveliness. But in order to see the life in things that are around us and in symbiosis around us, and also we are extremely codependent to, maybe we should look a little deeper. And there are said truths, like in the time it takes to say deforestation, another chunk of forest size of football pitch is destroyed. this is the reality of today. And if you continue with our daily habits, by 2090, we will lose 80%. We might lose 80% of the Amazon. And this is just a small portion. So the main question for Ocean of Air was to highlight where does your body end, and or spark that question, where does your body end and the plants begin, and how connected you are to something other than yourself. I think I'm gonna go very quickly to the last slides. I don't want to take too much of your time. Happy to answer any questions further down anyway. One interesting thing for us with the We Live in an Ocean of Air, we've been operating in kind of new media art space for almost 10 years now. And we've been engaging with a specific type of audience that are very young and coming from a specific background, but kind of hijacking some of the cultural institutions like such gallery that allowed us to expand our kind of audience group into multi-generational experiences, where a family of grandfather, father, and their daughter can come and share a breath together. So I guess it's about there's no age limit to engage with some of those technologies. It's more about the content that we can create responsibly can actually invite and also provide an insight that goes beyond the moment of experience itself. Finally, we've been working with a number of magnificent scientists, which is very exciting for us. David Abram, Katie Field, Merlin Sheldrake, and Stefan Harding, who allowed us to conduct a number of interviews with them and then capture their take on the world around us and world beyond us. And then work with a number of poets to translate those scientific insights into a poetic audio guide, which is accompanied by a number of both visual and auditory installations in London's Road Cemetery, which is part of the UK City of Culture, Coventry, and it's starting on 21st of June, running till the 15th of August, which you can go through the cemetery park, which is the kind of manifestation of these beautiful trees and bunch of gravestones. There's the life and the death together. So they are a series of ecological meditations which will guide you through the cemetery, and through that journey you will witness some of our pieces that are, if the We Live in an Ocean of Air is focusing on our out breath that goes into a tree, the Tides Within Us is focusing on in breath that's looking and going into the human body and dispersing into those patterns that are very similar to the trees, to lungs, to heart, to roots of a plant. So we work with Fraunhofer Mavis Institute to get as accurate as possible with the human body and the way the circulatory system works, and try to visualize these through a number of virtual portals that you can walk around, and they shift the perspective based on your point of view to give the maximum immersion, and allows you to kind of look through those magical windows. And the other piece that you can see there is the Cathedral of Nature, or we call it Observations on Being extended, where you can be in the presence of something so majestic, both in size but also inside. So what we've been trying to do, and hopefully we will be trying to do, is connecting soil to imagination, like David Haskell says. And in the Anthropocene, we are faced with the challenge of altering our behavior, so plants and fungi might better cultivate one another. In a single teaspoon of healthy soil, there are more bacteria, insects, and arthropods than the number of humans who ever lived on Earth. 90% of all plants rely on mycelium, 70% of the carbon sequestrated by the plants, and the trees that are storing all that carbon under the soil managed by the mycelium. So the question is, how can we connect soil imagination again? What indigenous people have been doing for millennia. Indigenous people make up only 5% of the world's population, yet managed more than a quarter of the land and protected areas. So the biochemical language that's sung by the plants to communicate with humans are just there. Those stories are important. So we just need to find new ways of telling them, and hopefully we will be in a better place in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Airson. Wow, I am really blown away by all of these presentations and the quality. And I'm very, very inspired by everything. As a last note to Airson's, I'd say pick up Entangled Life. It's a book about mycelium. It's really, really good. But we're running late. So first off, I'd like to thank the audience for staying a little bit later. If you'll bear with us, we are going to have some Q&A and some final remarks. So if you have a problem with that, please let us know in the chat. But this will be available in recorded form later on. So we don't have a lot of time for questions. So I'm going to take a question from the audience and massage a little bit. And I'll just ask each of our panelists. I'll run through the panelists so we're kind of efficient here. We'll wrap up at say 8:05. Don't want to keep everybody all night. But one of the panelists was saying, okay, I understand that you're using data. Not one of the panelists, one of the audience members was understood that we're using data. But he or she, they wanted to know more about the workflow and choice of tools. And I'm going to twist this a little bit and say, it's pretty clear that all of these works that we're doing, they're collaborations. So that feeds into the choice of tools and the workflow and maybe the degree of specialization needed to use those. So could each of us talk just pretty briefly about collaboration? So let's start with Alain Renaud. And can you talk about the role of collaboration in Analema and why you collaborate instead of making work individually, and how that fits into your workflow, because we do want to satisfy the questioner.
I think the answer is very simple. As far as we're concerned, Analema Group couldn't work without being a collaborative project, because we are all adding our little, I would say, magic formula to the group, and actually the fact that we collaborate is really also leading to most of the ideas that we've had. I think we've never been in a situation where someone came up with an idea and had the others work on it. The ideas that we had for various projects came from collaborative talking, and that's I think that's really the recipe for success, in our case at least.
Oh, great. Thank you, Alain. I'm going to move on now to Airson. Airson, with some brevity, could you tell the role of collaboration in your collective, and how does that fit into workflow and being able to use the tools effectively?
So I guess there is always a big percentage of collaborators or team members coming from outside and working on the projects in a continuous base, kind of continuous manner. And the professions that you would require vary so much that it's impossible to have a full-time member of the collective who's specializing on one single thing. Therefore, it's almost, we are creating an atmosphere, an environment where we have to collaborate with all sorts of other professions to move on and explore new mediums. So it's almost a must. And the interesting thing, obviously, the kind of internal kind of collective team learning something each time and expressing those newly learned skills a little better each time. So we are getting almost a good generalists around everything by learning through the collaborations that we do. And the process always starts with the kind of even the ideation phase is a collaborative process within the collective, but also bringing so many interesting minds into that process to figure out how to do something. And most of the tools and technologies are out there, but how can we bring them together in a seamless way to make it work? And in new media, it's about mastering the challenge, the change, because it changes so quickly.
That's very true. Rafiq, how does the collective mind fit into your studio? I mean, is this stuff you could do on your own, or you really need to be in a studio to do it? And what's the workflow there?
I totally agree with actually everyone. Literally, when I think if art is humanity's capacity of imagination, and if we push our imagination to the edge, that edge has certain science and technology. And I think eventually it's not an egocentric experience anymore. It's a collective experience. So it's a natural, I think, reaction to the context of any challenge. So like if you work with a quantum computation, there is no single way of like other than quantum physics, while you're handling with some cancer research or some protein folding research. Like they're incredibly different topics and aspects. So respectful to the like research itself, it's how we start. But I personally hands-on in the computer graphics, definitely AI computation whenever it's required. There's certain parameters has to be babysit, I guess, from an artistic point of view to really find some numbers and meaningful outcomes. But the process itself, I think, is fundamentally a research mindset, an academic research mindset that we are applying. And we try to be a horizontal, so which is anyone can be anyone for any reason. And we apply learning to learn rules, so we can learn anything if we learn how to learn. That really helps a lot, and share the knowledge as much as possible.
Oh, that's a wonderful answer. So we have time for one more question. This question, we'll start with Evgenia. And you know, we're talking about data and the invisible here, yet art is visible. So tell me, when you look at data, how does it make you hallucinate? Does it induce visions? Let's start with Evgenia, who started in photography. I mean, how do you move from something that is, if not dry, abstract, into these visualizations?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think that for me, gradually data became something that kind of, well, we look at it as numbers. It can be looked as numbers, but actually nature is constant data, and it's very complex data. And then when we work with sound is data, but actually sound can be unpacked. It's not just frequency and amplitude. We've looked at really, like, we kind of try to dig into sound on different levels and try to reimagine sound as this complex phenomena, the same with color and everything in between. So in this case, I think as artists, we're kind of reimagining all the relationships between things. It's not just the points or the numbers, is everything in between. And then I think one of the most interesting phenomena, and what actually we can do with data is, well, can we make machines learn how to interpret it and how to learn special kind of patterns and codes and recognize these patterns? And then what do we do with it after? So of course, if we're talking about, for example, looking at the patterns within the human voice, I think we can learn quite a lot, and we can make those experiences really count for people who enter into this immersive space. And how would this affect their social connectedness, the connectedness, like spiritual beings through their own voice, which is like one of the most intimate tools. So this is just one example.
Airson, I'm going to twist this a little bit now for Marshmallow. You know, you're talking about things that we can experience viscerally, yet treating them as data through taking the organic world and translating it into data and then back into experience. Can you comment on that? How what gives you visions, Airson? You know, when you're looking at these rows of data.
I think we are sitting in a really luxurious place where, as an artist, I don't have a claim to be as accurate as a scientist. And I think that gives the comfort of somehow interpreting the data in the way that you think might be. Because, you know, translating animal perception, is so difficult. So you have to be born with those senses in order to actually understand that world. So that's never going to happen. So the best guess is trying to understand what that scientific data suggests based on the tools that are available, and then try to kind of turn that into an emotional experience that's kind of specifically our take. So another artist might think completely differently. So I guess we are doing our best guess what this might be with the luxurious title of artist. So I'm quite happy with it, actually.
Thank you, Rafiq. I'll twist this a bit to you. I mean, architecture is a kind of data, at least in its conceptualization, but where do you start? Do you start with the visualization of the data, and do you hallucinate data?
Absolutely, yes, hallucination about data. But I think what is really inspiring is, I think architecture itself is fundamentally a very inspiring form of experience. I mean, if you look at the body work of Frank Gehry, Zaha Hadid, Tadao Ando, Toya Ito, like these people, I think, I mean, specifically the heroes, I'm trying to focus. Their approach to architecture is beyond just, you know, function and structure, and I think they are the fundamental core inspiration when start imagining about their beautiful canvases. But the data itself is sometimes really very poetic, meaning at like a wind data, temperature or air quality, but also can be sometimes very didactic, such as image archives, right? So they are super predictably collective photographic memories of time and space, right? If you look at New York, I mean, it's a very obviously Flatiron building recorded over the years in different time and, you know, seasons of time. So this kind of like a reconstructing reality from the data and from the machine intelligence is really very, and it's almost 4 years, but still it doesn't get old as a feeling. And I think the data here is, again, a form of memory. I think that really helps a lot to me and the team and the audience to navigate a form of memory. And that really changed the context in a hopefully more positive and optimist way.
Yeah, well, thank you, Rafiq. And thanks to all of our panelists, and especially thanks to our audience who's given us some very stimulating questions. We're out of time, but I just want to make you guys think about these questions. The audience has asked us about COVID-19 data. Could that inspire productions? Does science fiction influence any of this? We have a vivid answer there about Blade Runner, which I was tempted to bring up. But alas, we must wrap. So because we could literally go on all night. I'm going to hand this back to Art and Flux to give a bit of a summary, and then I might wrap. If anybody wants to stick around, we should be done in 5 minutes. So I'll wait to thank everybody. Although if people are going, I'd like to thank the audience members who've made it this far, and please stay around a few more minutes as we wrap up and give you some really important information. Over to you, Olive.
Thank you so much, Ali. Well, over the next month, Art in Flux has 2 more commissioned events with the National Gallery X. Transcendence, curated by Maria Almena, which is an exploration of the art behind creating mystical experiences, and Radical Ecology, curated by Afroscienza, which explores media art and sustainability.
Yes, I also would love to invite you all to our next upcoming Fluxlive. This online event is going to be focused on making multimedia performance accessible to young art students. So for this first live of the 2021, we are delighted to have the International Studio Kinematica, who will be presenting their first masterclass. This event is part of the Once Upon a Time in Animation exhibition programmed by Morpeth University at Paul Museum. Tickets are only £5, so don't miss the opportunity to learn how to create multimedia performances.
We actually have a very busy month this month, so we're also delighted to share that we're going to be doing CADAF Digital Art Fair as well, with works for sale from the Art in Flux co-founders. And we're going to be relaunching our Art in Flux Reclaimed virtual exhibition as part of the Kensington and Chelsea Art Week. So if you missed that last month, then there'll be a chance to explore our virtual space. And I'll just pop over now again to Olive to round off from us.
Yeah, I would like to say a huge thank you from Art in Flux to our speakers, Airson Hunterson, Rafiq Anadol, Evgenia, Emmetts, and Alain Renaud from the Analema Group, and to our host, Ali Hossaini, and the whole team at the National Gallery X. Ash, Iram, and Chris Michaels. And thank you to everybody in the audience for watching. We hope you enjoyed the event and we gave you something to reflect upon. If you want to stay updated with everything that we do, please join our newsletter and follow us on social media. And I'm going to hand back over to you, Ali.
Thanks so much, Olive. This was a wonderful event, the fifth of wonderful events, and a really big thank you to Airson and Rafiq for joining us. These were marvelous presentations, in fact, mind-boggling, and I could give all sorts of really grand statements, actually, because this is taken us to some very far realms. But I would like to talk a little bit about National Gallery X and what the National Gallery is doing behind the scenes, because as you know, we are basically this Noah's Ark of paintings that we're taking from the past into the future, and National Gallery X is a way of understanding how to reinterpret this art and create art for the present and for the future. But we also have a very pioneering scientific department, and that for decades, that scientific department, actually centuries really, have been creating data and all kinds of measurements. And they may not have called it data exactly the way that we call it now, but it is being digitized into formats that are usable. And tonight has been especially inspirational because we realize that these data can be used to help preserve the paintings, to help present them and to wider audiences, to make them more accessible to people, but also to use the data as a resource to make new art and to reinterpret it. So these paintings have a legacy that lives and resonates and echoes well into the future. And I think we see some examples of what can be done when you take whatever it is, nature, architecture, human experience, reduce it to data, and then reformat it for the future. So we're going to give you a link right now that shows you some of the work and some of the projects that are going on at the National Gallery. I think we kept everybody long enough. This has been a wonderful evening. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you to our co-curators. And thank you especially to the audience for coming. Please tell other people to come. It's going to be available to watch now and into the future. So have a very, very good night, everybody. And please take these thoughts with you and continue creating, everybody. Thanks.